Hello, viewers, and welcome back. I'm Braulio Rosa, the Executive Director of the Broward County Bar Association, and it's my great privilege and honor to have Judge Elijah Williams with me today. We are celebrating Black History Month. It's a program that I take great pleasure and pride in doing, the Broward County Bar Association, in partnership with the 17th Judicial Circuit. Judge Williams, welcome.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate you having me here this afternoon.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Judge, when did you first join the bench, and were you elected or were you appointed? And tell us a little bit about the process.
Yes, I was appointed to the bench 20 years ago, back in 2002 by former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush. Essentially, I applied, went before the Judicial Nominating Commission of 9 attorneys. I was one of 6 names to be sent to the governor, a very rigorous process, and I received the appointment from the governor.
So tell us a little bit about what division do you currently serve in?
I currently serve in the Juvenile Delinquency Division. I actually serve as the chairperson of that division. My first 4 years on the bench, 4.5 years, I served in the Adult Felony Division. And I asked to be transferred to the Juvenile Delinquency Division so that I could attempt to rehabilitate children.
So then I could assume that children are a great passion, or helping youth and mentoring them.
To some extent, as I often tell my court staff, my only concern is to help them reach their potential. And that's my mission, that's my drive, is helping children reach their potential in life.
So transitioning into a new topic, Your Honor, although it may work into this, where's your family from, and what was your upbringing like?
I was born and raised in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'll probably die here, as I oftentimes say. I essentially was born in the Dixie Court Housing Project, which is in central Fort Lauderdale off of Sistrunk Boulevard. And my mother was a staunch Christian, Bible-toting woman who had a huge faith in the Lord, taught me that. And my father was a hardworking delivery man for a flower company, and he did it for 55 years. And so I was raised in a very, let me suggest, a humble background.
Were your parents, did they influence you in any way, push you towards the legal community, a legal field?
Sort of like an indirect way. My mother taught me my passion for reading. She had this huge love for the written word. And so as a result, I think I own between 23 to 27,000 nonfiction books. So I think to an extent that I love the written word, it drove me to becoming a judge. I think Judge Gillespie put it best when he said, really what we do for a living is we interpret words on a piece of paper to a great extent. So I think that, combined with my father, the fact that he worked at a company for 55 years and never missed a day of work, that kind of drove my work ethic, along with my mom's love for reading that she cultivated in me.
So Judge, did you say fiction or nonfiction type books?
Yeah, nonfiction, books on psychology, how the human mind works, behavior, criminology, those types of historical biographies I'm fascinated by. So I became a huge collector of nonfiction books, which particularly on how to read people and so forth. And that was that's my love in life.
So probably, let's say like 4 or 5 years ago, I generally, and let me go backwards, I generally read nonfiction, or fiction, I'm sorry, fiction. I enjoy, science fiction and whatever, vampire novels and different, just to escape, right? But I kind of got into reading historical books for a little bit. And trying to remember, I think it's Doris Kearns Goodwin's Team of Rivals on Abraham Lincoln. Did you read that book?
I have not read that particular book. One of my fascinating characters is your military characters like Douglas MacArthur, General Patton, and so forth. I'm just always admired those individuals. It's part of my military background. Abraham Lincoln, of course, is the books that I read on Abraham Lincoln might be Lincoln on Leadership, a brilliant book that tries to adopt Lincoln's thoughts on leadership to modern business and organizations. So I'm a huge Abraham Lincoln fan.
Me too, after reading that book, actually, and
Sure.
which led me to, and I haven't read it yet, but I've downloaded the U.S. Grant memoirs that he wrote. Did you read those yet?
I'm just fascinated by Ulysses S. Grant. I could tell you a million stories about him. When I was in the Air Force, we had to all pick a character. And two characters of mine were Ulysses S. Grant and Stonewall Jackson. So yeah, Ulysses S. Grant was quite a character.
Yeah,
Sure.
I just from reading the Lincoln book really drew me into his character a little bit and
Sure.
realizing, wow, this guy is such an underrated American hero in my perspective.
Mhm.
I mean, someone who the North was getting beat up, and they had all the manpower and the material, and they were losing because they didn't have the generals, the leadership.
Sure.
Here comes this guy who some would say, well, he's a drunkard,
Sure.
and he was a great leader of men, right?
Sure.
And he got the North to start winning. And when he won that first battle in the West, in the Western campaign, was it Fort Donelson or
Sure.
and anyhow, you could tell I've read on this stuff, and you know, just he was amazing, and he was a tough guy, and he was a great
Sure.
leader, and you know, uncompromising in certain ways, which sometimes I guess you have to be as a field commander if you're going to be victorious. So
Sure.
yeah, okay, well, we went in this tangent, but it's an interesting one.
But you know what's interesting is Abraham Lincoln had this great quote, and he said that the greatest lawyers don't read law books; they read books on human behavior and psychology and so forth. And when you take a look at any list of the top 10 best attorneys in America's history, the Clarence Darrows, the Elfie Bailey, Abraham Lincoln's name is right in there. So he recognized instinctually that reading books that aren't law books, and I think that's why I got my drive, and I read that quote, my love for nonfiction books, and sort of worked its way up till I became a judge.
Talking about being a judge, do you think it's important to have cultural diversity on the bench?
I do, as long as the cultural diversity is tied up into what I call intellectual diversity. What I mean is that I heard Yvonne Burke was a former congressman out of California. And about 20 or 30 years ago, I was in the military and I heard her speak. And she made a comment which may be controversial, but she says that if you're an African-American, a Black person, and you have a position of power and influence, and you make the same exact decisions that a white person would make in your position, then we don't need you. We can simply just find a white person. So I think to some extent that if we're going to have cultural diversity, we have to bring along with it, not just the skin color and the culture and so forth, but also the intellectual diversity.
When you say intellectual diversity, are you talking about the experience, just because you grew up in a different neighborhood and with, in a different culture that really has you view things from a different perspective sometimes?
Yeah, sort of. I was in an interview once on national TV, and I made this statement. The American legal system, as far as I can tell, was designed by individuals who are white, wealthy, and highly educated. The challenge for me as a judge is, how do I make that same system work for someone who is a person of color, who's not as wealthy and not as educated? Can I make the system work for that person? That takes a certain intellectual rigor, which goes beyond just simply saying, I'm a person with a cultural diverse background. You have to constantly struggle and challenge yourself to meet that threshold.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, we could probably sit here and go deep for a while, but we'll have to come back on another day to discuss that one, because I think it's a fascinating topic, really, on the legal system and culture. And yes, amazing. But still on the cultural topic, do you think that Black judges or Black attorneys looking to become a judge, whether they run or look to be appointed, do they face any kind of special challenges?
Well, yes. You know, back in 2010, when I received opposition, I never forget, I was told by all the so-called political experts, do not put your face on any literature. You can't let the white community in Broward see that you're an African American. Change your name. Your name, Elijah Williams, is obviously it's an ethnic name. Get rid of the Elijah. Call yourself Harold Williams, or put E.H. Williams. Please, you can't let the white voter see that you're an African American candidate. That was a challenge. Quite frankly, I don't think that that's necessarily a challenge with the demographic shift. That would be asked to change my name and not put my face on literature in a countywide race. So I think to some extent, that challenge is no longer there. But certainly I think in terms of raising funds, it's just my sense that white Americans candidates are going to have more resources and so forth in terms of a bid for a particular judgeship.
So what would be your recommendation to a young Black man or woman attorney that aspires to one day follow in your footsteps?
What I would tell them is that the opportunity, it's there. You know, when I became a judge, I was the first African-American judge appointed in Broward County, African-American male judge, in over 23 years. That's over 2 decades. 7 years after I got it, Kenneth Gillespie comes along, Judge Gillespie. 3 years after Judge Gillespie got it, Judge Michael Robinson was able to receive an appointment. 6 years after Judge Michael Robinson came along, Judge Keithan Frank was able to receive a circuit court appointment. So the opportunity is there at a much greater level. We don't have to wait over 2 decades between appointments.
To be honest, I've been speaking with multiple judges, doing interviews and talking to your colleagues. You seem to be, I think, perhaps the most senior among the Black judges. And so my question would be, have you seen that equity change over time? Do you think that we've caught up with having a fair representation on the bench that would represent our population here in Broward County that's very diverse?
We certainly have a dire need for more culturally diverse, more African-American judges, as well as Hispanic judges, as well as Asian judges. There's a huge need. I take a look at the population, and I worked it out about 10 years ago. And let me suggest that we should have at least twice the number, based upon our population, of judges that we have currently sitting on the bench, more than twice. So again, the need is there. It's a dire need in this particular county.
What could we do to change that, to try to work towards resolving that gap in your mind?
In my sense, we have to, all of us, work together and recognize that there is a need. I recall reading years ago an article in the Florida Bar News where Governor Jeb Bush had the entire JNCs from every part of the state all in one room. And I'm reading the article, and he told all of them, our number one priority is to get African-American judges on the bench in every single district in all of your areas. And he made this comment, which I thought was fascinating. He said, and we have to encourage African-American candidates to apply. He said, because for too long, we've not encouraged them to apply. And so I think we have to encourage individuals to apply and to strive. But also, I need to suggest to you that it's not just a matter of mentorship. There's a term called sponsorship. And I always find it fascinating because a mentor is someone who listens to you whine, he has time to have coffee with you, and so forth. But a sponsor is someone who opens doors. He picks up the phone, he opens doors so opportunities can occur. So I think that all of us in these positions have to seek to sponsor individuals, open up doors for individuals to become a judge.
Wow. You're so right. So many people, it's so rare to get somewhere without someone lifting you up and helping you.
Sure.
So many of us that have achieved anything, it's like you didn't do that alone. There were
Sure.
all kinds of people along the way who were opening doors, lifting you up, and so it's paying it forward in many ways, and folks like yourself helping those people you see that have qualities that could arise to being a judge, and pulling them back, pulling them towards you and helping them.
Sure.
So, Judge, talking about that and the qualities I think that a judge would need. What kind of qualities could you tell folks out there that you would need to be a good judge?
I think the most important quality is intellect. I think we could talk about how nice you are all day long, or how compassionate you are, how patient you are, but I think you have to discuss the vital question of, can you intellectually reach the right decision in a legal matter? That's very critical. You have to be able to intellectually reach the right decision. Number two is you have to have a sense of urgency. In juvenile delinquency, I have children in front of me. They're on drugs. They're involved in human trafficking. They haven't been to school in months, if not years. They're in gangs. I have to have a sense of urgency. That's not a place for patience. I'm not going to be patient while you're on drugs, while you're in a gang committing crimes, while you're involved in human trafficking. That's not a place for patience. So I always suggest to individuals that compassion and being nice is important, but also intellectual rigor, intellectual stamina, as well as a sense of urgency. And I also might add that you have to have a sense of what the big picture is. I can structure a sentence where a child could one day join the United States Air Force and become a captain like myself, or never have an opportunity to serve his country in the military. So how do I structure that sentence? What's the big picture for the child's potential, for the child's life? Those are the type of decisions that I have to make as a judge.
On these more serious topics, I want to leave it with your thoughts on what should young people, let's go beyond the law student now, because, or the attorney, some kid out there, what do they need to be thinking? That kid who grew up like you, what do they need to be thinking to prepare themselves to one day be like you?
Whenever I meet kids, I always tell them, you essentially need to read a lot of books, keep your mouth shut, and keep your nose clean. And, I always use President Barack Obama as an example. He came out of nowhere. Less than like 2% of people ever heard of him 3 years before he became the US president. And I studied him, and he's a very brilliant guy, but you get the sense he got it because he read a lot of books. He kept his mouth shut in the sense that you never heard of him, but he also kept his nose clean in terms of scandals and so forth. So I always tell young people, if you follow those three rules, I get a sense that in American society, you can pretty much achieve anything that you want. That's just my sense of it.
Good advice. Good advice. So, Judge, from the serious to a little more lighthearted, so here's my question for you. If there was a biopic that was produced about Judge Elijah Williams, and Judge Elijah Williams got to choose the actor that would portray him, who would that actor be?
Back when I was a lawyer at the Broward Sheriff's Office in the early to mid 90s, the Miami Herald newspaper had a writing contest. And they asked that same question in a similar way: who would you like to have dinner with? And I decided to write up a 2-page to 3-page article, and I wrote Sidney Poitier. And they ended up winning the adult category. So I had to go down to the Miami Herald, this big press conference, and I got $100 savings bond. But I still think that if you were to ask me that question in terms of not having dinner with someone, but a biopic, I would go with Sidney Poitier. And I say this because I don't think I've ever heard of any individual who was able to change an entire perception of a race and the culture simply by the skill set that he brought to his profession. In this case, it was acting for Sidney Poitier. It would be Sidney Poitier.
An American giant in American cinema, and sadly, we recently lost him. And but what a choice! What a choice! You know, I've seen him in various movies, and of course, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner was one of those movies that I was mesmerized by. And being a kid who was born in the late 60s and saying, oh my goodness, I mean, what a different time. I didn't even realize. And he brought such grace and dignity to that character that I think he changed minds and hearts. Really did. Your Honor, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy these days, and thank you for your service in the military, in the Air Force. Thank you for your service on the bench, good people of Broward County. And you know, it's been an honor for me.
Thank you so much. And quite candidly, just thank you very much. And I don't say this condescending or patronizing, but we all appreciate in Broward County, the legal community, the work that you do for the Broward Bar. You're like really a legend. I don't know if you know this. Your name, no, I'm not patronizing or condescending. You're oftentimes mentioned in Broward County in many of our discussions, not just the judiciary and the lawyers, but also the overall community. So you've kind of made yourself like a central figure in the community, but in a very humble way. So we all appreciate having you in that particular position you're in. So I equally say thank you very much. And also thank you for serving your country.
Thank you.
Thank you as a Navy officer. Thank you so much.
I'm humbled. Thank you.
Sure. Have a nice day. And any other questions, just please let me know, sir. And it was a privilege just to be here. Thank you.
This was great. Let me turn off the recording. Got a little, you choked me up there, Your Honor.